Alright students, this is the second time we're going to try this. I'm going to try to not say 37,000 times because I don't want Kyler to pause this halfway through and just quit listening to the lecture. I don't want to ruin his education. So, more than likely I'm going to say it, but I'm not going to try to say it as many times as I did the last time. The last lecture we talked about the preamble of the Constitution, the very first thing that you see when you see the Constitution. We talked about how it was set up and the 6 reasons why it was set up. Those were to form a more perfect union. That would be 1. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. We also, when we did our project, we talked about what that actually means. So when we talk about establish justice, what does establish justice mean? Well, it means there was courts that were set up to actually try the citizens. If they committed a crime, there was a national justice system. Promote the general welfare, all the things that go under welfare, roads, schools, Medicare, Medicaid, parks. All these are promoting the general welfare. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity really means that the Constitution is here to provide freedom for everybody, not only now, when this was written in 1781, but in the future, our posterity, the future generations that we have. This Constitution was set up to provide a very long-term goal. Obviously, the Articles of Confederation did not work as per the weaknesses that we talked about earlier. But this was set up to provide a long-term government that was stable and can actually help the citizens there. And the Constitution is a lot longer than just the preamble, obviously. You have to be able to tell how you're going to establish justice, how you're going to provide for the common defense, how you're going to promote the general welfare. So the Constitution is broken down into all these different articles. And these articles are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There are 7 different articles in the Constitution. We're going to talk about the first 3 in the most detail. The first 3 set up the government and give the powers to the government, and it's going to really set up how things work. And the first 3 articles really break down the government into the 3 branches of government. And you may know these. The first one is the legislative branch. Article 2 talks about the executive branch, and Article 3 talks about the judicial branch. These 3 branches are very important. They are set up so there's not a king, there's just not one person in charge that decides everything. There's not just a group of people in charge. There are 3 distinct branches that all have power over one another. Now these powers are called checks and balances, and we're going to get into these very, very shortly. Okay, but I want to really let you know what these 3 branches are. The executive branch. This is the president and the vice president. These are the people that execute the laws, hence executive. The laws then are written by the legislative branch. Now this is Congress. It's broken into the House of Representatives and the Senate. These are the people that write the laws. And then you have the judicial branch, who determines if these laws are legal or not, according to the Constitution. These 3 branches work in conjunction with one another. They are there to balance each other out, so the president can't become too powerful, or the Supreme Court can't become too powerful. Now the way that this is set up is a system of checks and balances. The executive branch has checks over the legislative branch here and the judicial branch. And therefore the judicial branch has powers over the executive branch, and vice versa. So these powers work hand in hand with one another. So one branch can't be stronger than the other. Now, we're going to start with the executive branch and what sort of powers that they have. What powers does the president have over Congress? One of the major powers that the executive branch has over the legislative branch is the ability to veto bills. So, let's say Congress writes a bill. The president, therefore, is the one that actually executes it or signs it into law. They can veto it, which means that they can say that they don't want that bill to happen. That is what a veto is. They can also call special sessions. That would be another power that Congress or the president has over Congress. Another check or balance they have over the legislative branches. They can propose bills. We saw this when we watched the State of the Union. The President of the United States was saying, you should focus on tax reform, or you should send me a bill focusing on how to get jobs to veterans, things like that. Another veto that they have, they can do a line item veto, which is just rejecting a single part of a bill. So these are the checks that the executive branch has over the legislative branch. Now, vice versa, the executive branch also has powers over the courts. The president is actually the one who nominates these Supreme Court justices. So a couple years ago, President Obama nominated Sonia Sotomayor to be the Supreme Court. She wouldn't have been on it if the president had not nominated her. Okay. Nobody can just join the Supreme Court. The president actually has to nominate them. They can also grant pardons, which is if you're in jail, the president can grant a pardon that gets you out of jail. They can commute sentences. They can give reprieves. These are all for criminals that have been sentenced by the judicial branch, but still can be pardoned by the president. Now, as far as the legislative branch, the Congress, they again have powers over the president and the judicial branch. The judicial branch, sorry, I think I went in the wrong order. The judicial branch has powers over the executive branch and Congress. The judicial branch can declare laws unconstitutional. This is what's known as judicial review. The judicial branch reviews laws and says, well, do they go along with the Constitution or do they not? So they look at what the Constitution says. Is it a law that promotes the general welfare? If it is not, they can say it's unconstitutional and that law is no longer a law. Now, the judicial branch also has powers over the executive branch. They declare executive orders unconstitutional, which when we talk about executive orders, we'll get into more detail. Also, even though the president is the one who nominates the Supreme Court justices, the justices then serve for life. The president can't just go back a couple years later and say, oops, I actually don't want you on the Supreme Court. See ya. Bye. The judicial branch serves for life. And now the legislative branch has powers over the president and the courts. One of the major ones is the Senate can override a presidential veto. If the president says that he doesn't want this law, the legislator can actually say, you know what, you're wrong. We're going to override this veto. They can also impeach the president, which means they can kick him out of office for something that he does unconstitutional. They can also bring charges, and the Senate actually holds the trial on the president. The last time that this actually happened was with President Clinton. The House brought charges against President Clinton for the Monica Lewinsky affair, and the Senate held a trial. He was actually found not guilty, so President Clinton was not impeached. But this is a power that the legislative branch has over the president. The legislator also makes the budget, and they ratify treaties, and they confirm appointments. So the appointments that they confirm are these justices. So the president nominates the judges for the judicial court, legislative branches confirms them. And then over the judicial court here it is again, confirm presidential appointment of federal judges, and they actually are the ones that establish the courts and set the number of judges. So the legislative branch says, hey, there needs to be 9 Supreme Court justices, and that's it. They could go 11, they could go 13, they could go 20,001 if they wanted to, but they set that number at 9. So these are the checks and balances. Each of these 3 branches of government have power over one another. Now, your discussion question is going to tell me why they set these 3 up the way they did and how they decided to give these specific people the powers that they did. Why did they give the executive the veto power? Why did they give the legislative the impeachment power? And why did they give the judicial courts life terms? Okay, these are all questions that you need to answer and what we're going to talk about. So without further ado, I think I did a little bit better than last time. If I didn't, you can come in and slap me in the face if you want to.